Okay, I guess we'll go ahead and get started, and anybody else comes in, they can pick it up a little bit later. I appreciate you all showing up today. Well, this gets to be a little bit more fun this time than it was the last time, and we're going to learn to actually do some things this time in N1MM. And again, I'm going to give you the same kind of talk that I gave before, which is that uh, I know a lot of you have used N1MM and things, so some of the things I'm going to say is pretty basic, but I'm targeting this at people who haven't really played with it much at all. So bear with me through some of the simpler things as it comes through, and we'll go ahead and get started on this. Put it up there. How do I start sharing this? There we go. And we're going to talk about N1MM macros and useful basic features. Let me get a highlighter pen up here. There it is. And the thing about N1MM, there's a lot of people out there who like the classic way of contesting. I used to be that way the whole time, but having a little pistol station, I found out that I just don't get the rate that some of the bigger people do. So since rate is fun, I started exploring some of the ways I could use assisted operation with it. And whether you're assisted or not, some of the tools that are inside of here will really speed up some of your operations. We're not going to talk about it much this time, but in the spectrum display window, for example, you can jump from signal to signal without having to tune the VFO. And some people, like I started out saying, think that's not really classic traditional contesting. But you do get to the stations quicker that way. The rules allow it, and we're contesters, and contest means try to win, basically, or place high. And if your competition is using it and you're not, they've got an advantage on you. So I look at some of the aids in here along those lines and adapted them and started bringing them in. This is the first thing we'll talk about, the entry window and N1MM. And many logger programs are out there similar. We're going to dig into this a little bit deeper later on. But they got these F1, F2, and I've actually seen a lot of people go in when they're operating, go click on the F1 and click on the F3. Just use the things up at top on your keyboard for it. And I like to use color codings for me. I've changed them since then, but the green are positive things, yellow is caution for wipe, send him the orange, or these, I can't think what color it is, let's call them purple, are questions, and that helps me a lot when I'm really tired. If you only operate for 8-10 hours, that's not a big deal, but if you're in the chair for 20, 24 hours, 36 hours, whatever, those little things can really make a difference and add up. So here again, we're going to zoom in, look at the actual, this is what the entry window looks like shrunk up. So what are behind these little F keys? You right click on any F key and it'll bring up the file for it. You can have a default file, but then you can customize these. And F1 through F4, you always ought to keep them the same because that's the default for just about every logging program out there. And if you switch loggers, it'll make sense to you when you switch over. And if you go work at the Multi-2 over there in Rock Hill, they're using these the same way. So it's a good idea just to get used and train yourself to accept them. First 4 and probably the first 5 as the standard. But here you type in everything to, you got to have F1, F2 in a space, and then put in a brief description of what your key's going to do, and then a comma. Everything on this side is actually what gets shown, F1 CQ, F2 exchange, and everything after that is actually what is happening when you press that key. In this case with F1, it'll send CQ, test, N4XL, and then these brackets right here indicate to N1MM that that's not to be sent. It's a direction to N1MM to perform a macro. In this case, it's going to send a code to the radio to clear the receiver incremental tuning, clear writ. F2 is a little different, 5NN. That thing is the exchange, meaning the number, what number QSO is it, and it goes off and finds out on your log what the next number of the would be if you log this entry, and that's what it sends. That is the symbol they use for calls, so by typing this, hitting F5, whatever you have typed in the call sign field, the entry window gets sent. It's centering all the way down. I like F12 if you screws things up or you just can't get through and you got this partially filled with information. If you hit F12, wipe, it'll go ahead and clear everything out and put focus back here on your call sign so you're ready to go. Now there are separate run F keys, and there are separate search and pounce messages. And if you think, well, I'm not going to use anything but the first 5, and you wipe them out, N1MM counts all the way down, and if you take them out, now in F6, 7, it's going to take the first 5 of these. So you always have to have F1 through 12, even if you don't use them here, for both the run and the search and pounce. These don't have to be the same. For example, this says QRL. If you're in search and pounce, you can ask if the frequency is busy before you take it over and try to CQ. I don't use it anymore. I just jump in, but that's another topic. So these can be customized for both run and search and pounce for whatever. Now these aren't always the particular thing you have. Oh, I took that part out, so we'll skip that. Next screen we'll talk about is in Configure. This is your main entry window, the Configure portion there. You go to the Function Keys tab, and you can customize these to be anything you want them to be. Your CQ key is F1, and the QSO is F3, but again, I recommend you leave them default because that's what everybody uses pretty much universally around the contest community. So don't mess with these. Leave them things alone. I know people have. I did a couple times and figured out that's not the right thing to do. While we're here, a couple other things, not directly with the F keys and macros, but these are things I like to do. If you're in an automatic CQ, you can set this thing up to just CQ, and if nobody answers, start a second CQ after so many seconds. And if you check that, all you got to do is start typing something in the call field, and your automatic CQ will stop. Good thing to have checked. Contesters, everybody ought to be working dupes. I've been to a field day where they were using N1MM. They didn't really understand. They said, well, the software won't let me log dupes. And I said, all you got to do is check that box. And this one, if you somebody says you got the call wrong, when you get done and when you hit the key to say thank you and move on, if you're running to the next queue, this will send the whole call or before you, it'll send the call before it'll say like W4EEY, meaning I corrected the call, thank you, and then N4XL. I don't like using that. I'll leave that for you later on. Give an ESM demonstration. A nice thing about this procedure, I'm going to close this out a minute, if I can, and move this out of the way. This is a test thing that I set up in N1MM, and right now I'm in search and pounce. I'm going to put it to run, and you notice as I did that, this orange thing shifts back and forth. There's a thing in here called enter sends message, where if I hit enter right now, it's going to send what is the F1 key, or however it's lined up. You'll see as we go through this what happens. So if I hit enter right now, I don't know if I got a CQ in this. Let's find out.
CQNA, November 4, X-ray Lima. CQNA, November 4, X-ray Lima.
And then somebody answers, and as soon as I typed a P in there, it stopped. Let's say his call is Papa 40 Bravo. Now I don't have mine set up to voice these call signs. It's kind of hard to do that. But you notice as soon as I typed something in, Papa 40 Bravo, it changed. Now both F5 and F2 are highlighted. F5, if you recall from previous screen, was his call. If I had it voicing, it would pick Papa 40 Bravo, and it would actually say Papa 40 Bravo. In Morse code, it'd send it. So it'll do that first, and then it's going to send exchange. So as I'm using this, I like to voice my calls. I got his call. I would say, Papa 40 Bravo.
Tom, South Carolina.
And what I did there is that right after I said Papa 40 Bravo, I hit enter. So it said, oh, there's no call, and it went and found the exchange. By the way, I use the name Tom in the NAQPs. And now it's ready to copy his exchange. So let's say he's Bill. It's kind of hard when I'm holding this microphone up here. And he's in the state of Montana. And now it's ready, and as soon as I hit this, it's going to say thanks, and it's going to log the QSO.
Thanks, November 4 X-ray Lima.
And there you can see Papa 40 Bravo up here at the top. So if somebody answers me, I won't launch into another CQ. Let's say KB4EWQ answers, and notice as I did that, these both shifted. And he goes ahead, and once I copy that, I hit enter.
Tom, South Carolina.
It automatically shifts ready to receive. And let's say I don't get his name. I'm going to hit enter. Notice F8 is highlighted.
Again?
And okay, I get his name. It's Jim. And I hit tab, and it recognizes I still don't have the entire exchange right. So it's waiting for me, and if I hit enter, it would do it again and again. Let's say he's in Alabama, so I hit Alabama, and I hit...
Thanks, November 4 X-ray Lima.
Now, that right there is one of the best things you can do as a runner. You can use it in search and pounce too, but as a runner, that is a great tool. Just go ahead and enter that. We'll talk a little bit more about that in another slide or two, because it can really mess you up. By the way, I can't, it's hard for me to glance over and see everybody there, so if you got any questions, go ahead and speak up, and feel free to just yell out there. Let me bring this presentation back over here again, and we will resume this. ESM, enter sends messaging, can be confusing, and I screwed it up more than once as I learned. But once you get the hang of it, very few people give it up. It really, over long hauls, minimizes errors, fatigue, and it'll improve your rate. There is absolutely no doubt about it. The trick to me to learning it was, since this thing, if you got to do a fill or something, it messes everything up sometimes. The thing I learned is, okay, as long as the contact's going along just fine, you give your exchange, and he says, okay, whatever, and you can't quite copy them. First thing I do whenever ESM gets screwed up is I take my hands off the enter key. And then I found it best for me to go ahead and just manually press whatever F key there is instead of letting ESM do it. And then if you use the space bar, it'll move the cursor to the end of the exchange field, and then you can just enter and pick it up where you left off, which is thank you, and go on to the next queue. That may or may not work for you, but it really helped me out quite a bit. Back up here just a minute. Get caught up. When we look at these, where'd they go? There they are. When you look at these things, notice I've mentioned about this asterisk and whatnot, and numbers, and these things in brackets. Sometimes people, when they're first starting out, and even old timers, they think that an F key file is actually a macro. It isn't. The F key is just the thing you push on the keyboard. These things are special characters. That's the message. And anything in the bracket pretty much are macros. And then you also have shortcuts too. So as you go through there, it's best to keep your terminology a little bit correct. So we're getting back up where we were. These are some of the special characters you can put in the F key file. It'll get the call from, or there's a macro that you can actually do my call from the station info block. When you set up N1MM and you type in station info and you put your call in there, that's what that reads, is where is that coming from. asterisk or the exclamation point. That's what we said. It sends the call sign. What do you have in the call sign field? They've also got weird things in there too, like the @ sign will go and pick off your receiver what the current frequency is, and then you can send it in an F key thing. The number is a serial number, like we said. Here it'll look at a non-active radio, like radio 2 or your VFO B, and go ahead and put that into an F key file too. And these things are interesting. There's a third one out there too, I believe. Whenever you see something in that format with the stuff after it, that tells N1MM to send a command code to the radio. And you can do things like turn your receive antenna on and off. You can tell it to play whatever's in a memory slot of your radio for sideband messages or CW messages. Anything you can do with your radio just about from the front panel or dig into the menu, you can tell N1MM to go ahead and send that message to the radio, and that's the format used for them. And we'll skip over that one. This is a experimental type thing that they were using. If I can't see the top of my screen, but I think it's from. Can anybody say what that's from? Papa 40 somebody?
PJ2T.
PJ2T, and he's a multi down there in the Caribbean, and he's got a few interesting things in here that I thought would be worthwhile talking about. Not so much that you will actually use them, although I use this very message thing a lot we'll talk about, but it gives you an idea how well you can customize these for whatever your particular use is. And this one is pretty interesting to me. I use them quite often. And what very message does is it, in this case, this is the first very message, it sends CQ test N4XL, and it sends that several times, in this case 3 times, and then the next time it'll send, instead of CQ test, it'll send test my call test, and my call will be whatever you have in the station info, N4XL or PJ2T. So that works out real well because you can vary what your message is, and those are the groups. A lot of times you'll forget to add that little and at the end. I screwed that up a lot of times. But this one particular is useful if you're a runner. This is the second very message. If you got a good rate going on, you don't really want to send your call every single time. So this sends thank you and waits for the next person to call at the end of the queue. But then at every third time, as some of the rules require, it sends your call. And that way you meet the rule requirement, but you can still keep a good rate without having your call thrown in there each time. So there's a lot of interesting things you can do. If you remember, I said you got to have F1 through 12 in every single blank. He's not using them, so he just leaves them blank. This one caught my eye, and I really thought this was pretty cool when he did it. This is his search and pounce messages, and he really only uses 6 for his search and pounce messages. But you got to have F7 through F12, and he put these things down here in because he's a multi. If he's working on, say, 80 meters or whatnot, and he gets a rare one that answers him, he can tell that person, instead of saying, hey, please move to us on 160. And instead of having to say all that or type it out in Morse code, he can just activate that search and pounce F7 menu message from his run messages and automatically have his transmitter send that to the rare station he wants to move. And in a multi, the stations are often linked by internal communications. The same time he's sending that, he sends a message to the 160 meter operator, hey, then somebody else is coming over to work you. And that's really kind of cool, the type of things you can get set up. They can get pretty complicated.
Hey, Kevin?
Yeah?
Could you back up back up one more where it's got that every third call, sign in your call? Yeah,
Yep.
right there. I'm going to take a picture of that. That's really cool.
They have an explanation in the manual
Thank
of
you.
how this all works, but yeah, that's pretty useful. I use it all the time. Oh, another thing about these I didn't mention is you see these all have start out, but then there are lines that have a hash mark in front of it. All that does is it tells N1MM don't do anything with whatever comes after that hash mark. This is just an information for you to help sort out what you're doing. But I do one other thing a little bit different. We'll get into it a little bit later. I may have two separate exchanges. An F2 for, especially do this in South Carolina QSO party, where if you go up in a QSO party, you pretty much just send your county and your state county, and that's it, and it goes through. But on 160 in Morse code, there's the 160 contest going on, and they don't care what county you're in. They want to hear your state. So I will set up two F2 exchanges, one for everywhere else and one for 160, and put a hash mark in front of the one that I'm not using. And when I go up to 160, I'll put a hash mark in front of this one, and then take off the hash mark in front of the exchange I need for the people on 160. Because they're not in the South Carolina QSO party, and you're calling CQ contest, so they're going to answer you. And then they get all perturbed, and it slows both the parties down when they say, well, yeah, you're in Greenwood, but what's your state? So I just sent them the state and the county. I figure the people in the South Carolina QSO party, they're not going to be upset about it, and they haven't been. All right, this is, I don't do some RIDI, but we're going to talk about a couple RIDI things that come into play here. And another interesting feature, you ever turn across a queue and you hear this about people sending 5NN, 599, nobody pays attention to that anyway, and then they slow down to get to the exchange? That's what this does. Every one of these little, I don't know which way, left carrots, I guess I'll call them, speeds up your CW, and then it's transmitted at the higher speed, and then every one going right caret slows it back down again. And that's how you do that type of thing if you desire to do that. Now I screwed up when I first started playing this. I had like 4 over here and only 3 there. Maybe it was the other way around. So it ends up changing speed every time you transmit. And what I just described, I might start at 28 words a minute, and then after 4 or 5 QSOs, I'd be down to about 12. So always make sure you got the same amount of numbers on carets on each side of it. This one does just the opposite. Sometimes people have a hard time picking up South Carolina or whatever you may be doing. You want to give emphasis to it. They're having a hard time getting the exchange. So here's one that says 5NN at the regular speed and then slows it down so the exchange is easier to copy for people who don't have the code speed. Here's a RIDI example. This came from Bill, N4IQ, how you can set it up. The exchange, he puts it in transmit, sends 599, repeats his exchange twice, which is standard. And in the Bardig, you're supposed to send whatever, I guess, what time you actually make in the queue. So this goes out and reads the time out of your computer, puts it in an acceptable format. I think that's what the 2 means for the contest. 599, exchange, the time. That, if you remember, says sends his call so that you know you're talking to him, and then puts it back in receive. This thing, there's a feature where you can, while you're particularly useful in RIDI and some digital, I guess, could be for sideband and CW, but a little harder for me. It goes out, and when you get 4 or 5 people calling you, particularly on RIDI as I understand it, you can click on each one of the calls of the people calling you, and it puts it in a list. And then you go ahead and you hit F8, and what it'll do is you'll have put that guy the first on the top of the list, his call in. It'll put it in transmit, send the first top of the list. It'll go ahead and log him, and then it'll grab the next guy off the list and put it in the call window ready to repeat this. And it'll say what his call is, thank you, now, and it'll send the exchanges that you need, whatever you have in F2 and F2, which is his call, and or excuse me, your exchange, and then this, and then it'll shift back to receive. then you hit F8 and it repeats the process. So it's amazing what you can do with the F keys and these macros. And there's pages of these macros. A couple times I just looked through the macros and said, "Oh yeah, I always wondered. I was irritated I couldn't do that." And it'll show you how you can make that be. Here's the rest of his RTTY run messages that Bill uses. Pretty self-explanatory. He uses an enter, so it gives a line feed and makes his call stand out a little bit better. Clear RTTY is a macro that I use a lot. What that does is if you're transmitting, sometimes you'll want people to call you off frequency, or you want to try to get off frequency a little to pick up somebody out of the big pileup. And when you call CQ, you don't want your RTTY on. You want to start where your transmitting is, and that'll automatically clear your RTTY, so you don't have to reach over to the radio each time to do it. And we went over kind of those a little bit. He has my call, which will say put it in a line feed, send his call, and then a line feed again so that his call stands out a little bit clearer from the mess. All that type of stuff is going on. So these are kind of useful when you're doing digital. You got all kinds of different options too. Now Bill, this isn't sideband. This was in his, this wasn't RTTY. This was in sideband. Could just as well be CW. Bill doesn't like using the message format of storing things in the F keys in N1MM. He prefers to use the memories in his radio. And what he does is put his CQ in memory storage block 1, 599 in block 2, so it'll send 599 whenever he accesses code PB2, and then he voices the serial number. And then in PB3 he has thanks and call, and PB4 is just his call for when he's searching pounds. He can just activate the fourth memory slot and send that out. And that's what this is up here under F1. Remember I said everything after the Cat 1 ASC. I think they changed that. I think it's Cat 1 ASC. And it'll send memory block PB1, or he does single operator 2 radio, so he can send it to either radio. And works out kind of well for him. And notice again, he leaves F5 through F20. He doesn't use them. He doesn't have memory blocks for them, so it goes ahead and clears them out. You used to have to hit hitting escape and RTTY would not stop the N1MM, but they fixed that. Hitting escape will stop it, so you don't need that line anymore. We already talked about wipe does before too. Here's kind of another example I used for one South Carolina QSO party. And if you remember at the beginning, we had real simple. I just had to put my call or put CQ in or whatnot. Sideband uses WAV files, so you've got to tell N1MM to go out and find whatever WAV file you play when you want to play whenever you hit an F key if you're using sideband. Now there is a default place to store, but I make up different audio files for different contests, and this is in my QSO party folder, particularly the South Carolina QSO party. So this doesn't have to be there if you don't use that. And then this is the name of the file that's in there, 59greenwood.wave. So that's how you read these things. I was using the club call sign there, and I went to the QSO party, South Carolina, and played my WW4SF call for what my call was. So that's a good thing, and if you notice, we'll get to them a little bit more. I just explained that one. This uses the vary message. It gets kind of complicated because you got to put the WAV file names are often a little bit longer in there. But this does plays this message for I think it's 4 times, and then it switches over to this one once, and then it resets the counter and it starts all over again, repeating where it was. This is an example. I told you sometimes I put the number sign. I have 2 different exchanges, and that's what that basically did. I've got one for 160 exchange, and I've got one for exchanges everywhere else. So on when I go to 160, All I do is right click on the F keys, bring up this file, delete that, put a pound in front of there, and that's all it is. It takes less than 10 seconds once you do it a couple times. Again, we have a blank spot there for that. And this is another feature, particularly with sideband, which is useful. If you could program if you have a blank F key, you still have to put a WAV file in there. In this case, I put F10 WAV file, but it was empty, just a quarter-second WAV file. You can record your audio on the fly if you set it up correctly. So if like you're doing a split operation, you could say N4XL listening here and on 7060, and it would remember that. So you could go ahead and hit F10 and put it, and then if you moved your listening frequency, you could just record it on the fly all over again. There's a procedure for doing that. And you also, we had that as an example before, you can combine F keys. This is F5. If I push F5, it'll play both F7 and F8. So you can combine things too. Questions so far? Okay, this is back in the configurer, which is off the file, and you come up here to the other tab, and you've got two things we're going to look at. This is the sideband up-down arrow increments. So if I push the up-down arrow on my keyboard, when I'm in sideband, it'll go up and down 0.05 kilohertz. And you can change that to be whatever you want. And for CW, you can change it as well. I found those numbers work good for me for doing either RIT, or if I can just use it regularly, bounce it up and down just by moving it up and down, and it'll move the whole transmit frequency as well if I don't have RIT on. And you would use this if you, when you're in SMP, if you jump to a spot and you could hear somebody a little off frequency, you can just push the arrow key to go whatever direction he's in and tune him in that way without having to move your hand off the keyboard and get to the VFO. And again, that seems kind of rinky-dink, but you're trying to maximize your rate. And sometimes it's much quicker to do this, just bump that up and down a little bit. Over here, those little carrots that we had to say you speed your CW speed up and down, this is how far each caret will move it, 2 words a minute in this case. Audio files. This gives people a little bit of problems now and then. I like to use Audacity, although there are plenty others out there. Why? It's a free WAV file editor. A lot of them do some of this stuff, but you use it to trim the silence at the start and stop of the recording. Like if I go ahead and hit the transmitter and then I start talking, the more time there is, more gap there is between starting a transmission to respond to somebody's CQ, just dead space before my call goes out. Everybody else is jumping in there. So you want to make sure you have all the dead space removed at both the front and back of your recordings. And if I pause, like I'm talking here, I kind of stop for a second. You can go in after you record a message and remove the blank spaces so that none of that stuff's in there. Your volume tends to go up and down as you say messages. If you've got some weak spots in your call or weak spots in your message, you can grab just that portion of the message and amplify it so it's all a little bit closer to normal. And they've got a feature called Normalize, which we'll see what that does in a minute or two as a screenshot example. What that does is it figures out where the peak volume is, amplitude is, of your WAV file, and you can set it so that it is all your messages are always the same. I like to use a -8 dB. So sometimes I might record a CQ contest, and then I get a little tired. This is November 4 X-ray Lima. My volume changes. So you can grab those WAV files and it'll amplify the entire WAV file and set the peak to be the same. And that way, as you play back the messages, say you got a separate audio message for thanks and you got one for N4XL, you might hear thanks N4XL. You can set those so they come out the same each time. The one thing that doesn't do is it only grabs the peak of the entire file. So when you're recording, you either got to go back and grab the rest of them and amplify them, or I found the best way to do it is practice saying it a couple times so that you got a fairly constant volume across your whole message before you start your recording. Then normalize works the best. They've got a way that'll find out where you're clipping through it. I've had mixed results with that. I generally don't use it anymore. I just watch to see what's happening on my VU meters when I'm recording. And Audacity is capable, although I heard they modified it. I haven't tried it in a long time, of grabbing, say you record 10 audio files of different letters and numbers. You can grab them all at the same time and all normalize them at the same time, or do whatever you got to for them. So all that's capable in Audacity, and it's free. The other thing about this is your recording should sound the same as the live microphone. So don't record it with one microphone and then shift to another microphone. It gets disconcerting if you're having a hard time copying somebody and they're really weak, for example, and you're trying to pull them out of the mud, and all of a sudden you think you're listening for what Gary sounds like, and then all of a sudden Ralph's not there, but you change the sound a little bit of how you sound with a microphone or your equalization or compression or whatever, and they might think it's Ralph coming in instead of Gary, and they'll keep trying to find Gary. The other thing, it helps the other station maintain focus. A few things with WAV files. I use outboard external processing. I've got one of them W2IHY units, and I screwed it up a couple times. I was using the processor in W2IHY, and then I recorded it through there to my computer, and then when I played it back, I still had the processor on my radio. Well, that tends to screw things up a little bit, so just be aware where you're compressing things. In my case, what I do with this external process unit, nobody else probably is doing this or not, but I will record the audio files through the W2IHY unit compressed, so they're stored audio files compressed, and then I won't have the compressor on in my rig, but my audio and the microphone goes through the same processor W2IHY unit, so they both have the same compression levels going into the transmitter. To make numbers, to voice call sign numbers and stuff like this is pretty difficult and involved. They've got a new process where you can have artificial intelligence do it for you. But the traditional way is to record a sound file for every single letter and number. Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, 4, 6, 8, whatever. And I used to record them one at a time and play with them. But I discovered if you're going to try to set that up, it's better just to go through the whole thing at the same time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 0, 11. And notice by doing that, I could keep a fairly constant volume across the whole time I was saying it, which makes it easier to make them sound normal. And I went to 11 because if you're counting 1, 2, 3, 4, notice how that 4 sounded a little bit odd at the end. If you count past your last number, you don't unconsciously put that indication in there that 4 is done. Because let's say you're passing the exchange and it has 3 digits, and you say 1, 4, 8. A lot of times you'll think that some people might think that it's done with the 1, 4, and they're not expecting another number because they pick up on that subconscious act. So that's getting kind of anal, but that worked well for me as it went. And number and letter files, if you do this, goes in the letters file folder. And best to use the same audio format type for all the files. What I mean by that, if you record them at 8 kilohertz and so many bits, then you want to use that for all your audio files. These days it's not quite as important if you've got a fast computer, but every time when I'm going to talk Windows, every time Windows detects a change in the audio format, it has to stop, recognize what that change is going to, reset itself, and adjust everything in its train, and then begin to play at a different resolution. So you have less processor load by playing them all at the same time. And if you've got a slower computer, it helps prevent some of the delays that occur in playing things. This is an example of Audacity. Most of us have seen this type of thing. You have up here your effect screen. I think they've upgraded this since I took a screenshot of it. And this is what the audio file looks like. Here's when I'm talking about the format of what I was recording at the time. This is N4XL is what that particular one is. Shows me up there. Here's I think this says the number 1. Again, I can't see. And this is an unedited version of my recording of 1. And what I did is I recorded the whole thing, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then I pulled out the individual numbers and saved them as an individual WAV file. So that's how I did this. But this is a copy of 1. And notice there's a little bit of a delay up here, a long delay at the end, and I trimmed it on the beginning and end, and it took off a heck of a lot of time. And then this, if you notice, between here and I normalize it to ATB, there's a little bit of height difference between these two. This is up here about 0.3, and when after I normalized it, it's up to about 0.4 at the -8 dB level. And that's what normalization does. But if you notice, this is still kind of weak. I would listen to it, and if there's any portion in here I think would enhance intelligibility, I would put the mouse click down, grab that portion, and then amplify or reduce it a little bit as the case may be. So you can do all that in Audacity. Here's a number 3, and it all works the same way, but I included this because look at this spike. When I first started saying 3, my particular audio chain didn't react quick enough, and I got a spike on that thing. So here I went ahead and trimmed it. Here I normalized it to 8 dB, but I still got that spike here is so much higher. And notice here that spike is about the same level. What I did is I grabbed that spike with the mouse method I just told you. I went from here to here. I can't do it on this screen, but I selected that portion, and then I told it to amplify it by like -6 dB, and it dropped that spike down. I don't know that I actually needed the spike, but it wasn't hurting anything, so I left it. If I was running an amplifier, though, and that spike could make a difference and cause things to trip offline, you might want to completely remove that. But I'm a low power station, so I didn't use that. Here's where I'm talking about you can grab just a portion and do whatever you need to. I mentioned up here there's the effects screen. This is the options that are there from the older version. I don't think they have all these now, but that's the amplify, that's the normalize, and that's your clip fix to take a look at it. Again, I had clip mix results, and I don't use it much anymore. Here we're back to the entry window screen, and I clicked on the config button. And we're going to talk a little bit about setting up audio in N1MM. But before we do that, here's where you check the box to turn enter send messages on and off. If you type a call sign in your call field, and then you go ahead and you move off frequency, you didn't work them, you can turn your VFO or jump off frequency. And if you didn't work them, it can, if you check that, put that guy on your band map. Now those of you who aren't assisted, you want to use that, because if you're doing search and pounce tuning around and you discover that station and you turn off frequency and it puts it on your band map, that's not assisted operation. That's no different than saying, oh, I found K1ZZI on 7.028, and you write it on a piece of paper, and then later you go back to 70288. Same thing. So you can use that and not be assisted. Sometimes you get off in another window doing things you shouldn't do. If you're trying to win a contest and grab rate, you can check that and when you turn your VFO, focus will come back, etc. If you are tuning the bands and you were running, if you come across your run frequency again, it'll switch back to CQ on you, which confuses the heck out of you. Keep on tuning pass because it'll be in run now, and you'll find a certain pounce station and you'll push an F key and it won't do what you want it to do. That gets to be a pain. Tell it not to switch to run if you're like me. And I often show non-workable spots and dupes in my band map. Why? Because if I'm tuning, search and find new stations, digress a minute. Everybody thinks if you're running assisted and you got spots, you just jump from spot to spot, and there's nothing to it. I am here to tell you that if you're going to win being a search and pounce operator, you do jump from spot to spots, but there are a lot of stations out there, or a few anyway, that aren't spotted, and you got to go find them and pick them up. So you go through the band a couple times using spots or whatnot, but then you better be turning the VFO and finding those stations that aren't spotted. So I want them dupes and people that I can't work to be shown on the band map, so as I'm tuning, I'm not just looking at the radio, I'm looking at what's going on the band map over here, and I say, oh, I know who that guy is. I don't need to stop and listen, waste time listening to who he is, and I'll just move on. CQ repeat. We'll talk about that a little bit later. Remember that call history lookup button. But for audio, which is where we're going, that's the button right there you want to click, and it brings up this thing. And you got a monitor to do things. This determines what the master output volume of N1MM is to your radio or to your interface, whatever it is. I had mine set down to 50 for a long time, and I just couldn't make it jump up. That's because I didn't have these things on playback set up to the proper level. But you go to monitor. We'll come back to this in a minute. Nope, gotta go here. And this is where you set up who your playback options are, what audio stream you're using, and message recording, what your audio device is for recording your stuff. But I put this one in here because of this. Anybody know what concatenate means? Okay, basically what it means is combine things. And N1MM, by default, that's not checked. And if you're doing sideband files, and you're playing like F5 and then F2, it'll go ahead and say the guy's call, and then it'll have to say, okay, I'm done with F5, your processor will. Next one I'm supposed to do is F2. Let's go get F2 off the drive, load it in here. Okay, I know what F2 is. Now I'm going to go ahead and play F2. Well, that space in between there, while it's shifting its focus from F5 to F2, it oftentimes puts a delay in your message, and it doesn't sound right. Particularly if you're doing voicing calls. It'll go K4AL. But if you hit this concatenate, what it does is it goes out and it grabs every audio file in your F key stream, loads them up in a buffer, figures out what they are, and then when it plays, it goes K4AL. It doesn't have that gap in between each letter. So if you're doing sideband, you want that checked. We got that done already. Audio stream examples. I don't need to do this because I already did that in the NAQP example that we gave before. I don't have one of the voices. I used to do voicing, but I won't go into why, but I just decided not to do it anymore. All right, and the multi-operator, not too many of you. Well, some of y'all get over there to Dave's station or go up to other multis somewhere. If you're in a multi-operator and you've got a voice file from Dave AFP calling CQ, and then when I'm operating on the microphone, I answer and say who I am, the voice changes and it could disorient people. Some of y'all, if you do voice contests and you hear a female call and then you answer and all of a sudden a guy's coming back to you, that's what's going on. So what you want to do is use the same recorded voice for calling CQ as you do for the messages. And you can do that by recording your own voice messages for all the exchanges every operator does. And then when you sit down at the panel, type op on or hit Control O and type your call in, and N1MM will not play Dave's wave files for me. It'll go find my wave files and play them. And that's how this is set up in the F key file. Operator means read whoever logged on as the operator and play their wave file. That's what that's telling you. Thoughts on what you can do? Sometimes when you're in Morse code, something goes wrong or whatnot, you can put this symbol in F11 and it'll send da-da-da-da and tell people to stand by until you fix whatever you got to stand by. So those special characters can be used. And N1MM will usually log in ESM whatever you have at the when you get done with they send you your exchange and you're done, it'll log it. But sometimes you may have to actually hit log, and there are other examples too of when you do it. So if you put log in your thank you file, you don't have to hit log on the little button in the entry window. And yeah, I already mentioned any of the codes in your radio, you can go ahead and set them up in an F key too. I have trouble. There are N4XL, K4XL, N3XL, and N1XL in some contests. So I start calling somebody and I'm N4XL and I get K4XL and they send their exchange. Well, that happens so much that if I've got an open slot, I put both N4 and XL, both CW and sideband, in an F key so that I can just pop that and let them know, hey, you got that wrong. I don't have to repeat it over and over. And that's worked out fairly well for me. This is back in the contest setup field. We went over this a little bit in the previous N1MM. And down here, if you're setting up for a contest, it says send exchange. If you put 5NN5, which is the exchange you would normally send, and then you put 5NN in the F key and then tell it to send the exchange, it'll send 5NN because that's in the F key, and then it'll say, okay, now we send the exchange, so it'll send 5NN again because that's what you put in there, and then it'll send 5. So, like it says here, omit the RST, just put in there whatever the heck your exchange is, and that'll take care of that part of it. Sometimes you have unintended consequences by making changes, and you need to be alert of them. I hope none of you are using cut numbers in CW. I hate you if you do. They're horrible things. Please don't. I'm not the only one that feels that way. But a lot of people says they want to use them because it's shorter message time, gives you a higher rate. There's a lot of people out there getting rates around 200 plus without using cut numbers. So I would say that's not necessarily true. But a lot of people complain about them and confuse them, and they have to ask for repeats, especially if you're going 36 miles an hour and they're only 36 words a minute, and they're only really copying about 28 and they're pushing themselves to get it. Cut numbers just confuse the heck out of people. It slows it down. Another thing that people like to do is send CQ or test faster. Everybody knows you're calling CQ. They recognize that, and they recognize test. So here on this example, I sped up test and then slowed back down and sent my call twice. Sounds like a good idea. Or 5NN. We'll stick with this one. When you speed it up, the skimmers are out there trying to pick up your call, and if you change speed like that, it can confuse the skimmers. So it's probably not a good idea to speed that up. Sounded like a good idea because it's faster, but you ended up with more busted spots that way and people not knowing who you are. So try to avoid that if you can. And also in here, speed changes can confuse our message, can disorient less experienced operators, and more fill requests. Here's the entry window. Any questions before we go on? It took me about 3 or 4 years to realize just what in the heck this thing can do for you. and then I started using it, and I don't have to look away from making cues somewhere else a lot. Here are some special keys at the bottom. Escape is stop, or you can just click on these things, wipe log, store, or spot it. You can go out and look at a QRZ page, but if you are, you're not putting cues in the log. You'll do it a couple times and you won't like it because every time you hit that button it opens up a new window of the other station. I think they did that on purpose so you don't keep hitting it on every single call. This section here tells you if you're in run or search and pounce mode. I just gave you an example back there about switch to CQ if you're tuning the band and you run across it. So it's a good idea to sometimes keep track of that. And if you're doing SO2V and SO2R, there's a green and a red dot here. That tells you where your receive and transmit focus is, but that's the one to know right there whether you're in run or search and pounce. That little circle, it means you have it set up to do an automatic CQ repeat. If that's not there, you hit F1, it'll call CQ once and wait for you to do something. If that's there, it'll wait so many seconds and start all over. That's your word per minute and CW speed. You can hit them up and down. Yeah?
And,
okay.
Is there a way to make that CW store a default? Every time I get out of the program and get back in, it's back at 45 words a minute, and half the time I forget to set it.
It is a default. I'm going to suggest you have something set up wrong in your N1MM ini file. And if you can go to that ini file, find out where it says 40, delete it, and make it be whatever you want it to be by default. There will be a line item in your N1MM ini. I can try to walk you through that after this.
Okay.
But I'm going to suggest if it's not remembering it when you change it, there's something wrong in what it's reading.
Gotcha.
This thing here, we showed you about the orange thing. That basically tells you where enter send messages has your focus and shifts around as you tab across the different fields in this thing right here. So if you ever get confused where you're at in ESM, just glance down and look for the orange. You wonder what frequency? Yeah, you can turn around and glance over, but you can also glance up here and see what frequency you're on, what your mode is. I do SO2R, so I know this entry window is for radio 1, not radio 2. Quick way. You can tell it it's an option. If you right-click on this entry window, I think it'll come up to show Zulu time, so you can see what your Zulu time is the whole time you're contesting. You don't have to have the info window open to see what your score is. That's how many cues. That's how many. This is a 2-zone thing. I think this is the number of first multiplier, the number of second multiplier. This contest only has one. That'll be just a single number there. And that's what my score was at that point in time on the contest. Here, we're going to talk a little bit about this and show you about SuperCheck partial in a little bit too. You type in a call, HK1, and what that red means is I don't have that multiplier on this band. Notice the 80 is also red. If I was on 40 meters and I typed HK1 in, it would be blue. Why? Because it doesn't know yet what the whole call is. And the other thing interesting here is this question mark. If you're using call sign lookup, call history lookup, SuperCheck partial, I'm sorry, it'll go ahead and look up that call sign and it'll try to match it in the SuperCheck partial. And right now it's saying it doesn't have a match. And so it's putting a question mark up on the inside of there. Down here it tells you if you're in a contest that talks about countries, this HK1 is Colombia, and you should expect to get, if it's doing zones, a zone 9 multiplier to come in here in your CQ zone. This will give you beam headings if you've got directional antennas or receive antennas or whatnot. Tells you when their sunrise is, sunset, etc. if you get into that. As we mentioned, this band tells you where you've worked that particular country at, a multiplier. If you need them here for a double multiplier on the blue, you need them just for a contact. Again, we covered what that was for in ESM. Talked about that one already. Now I've typed in the full call, and it finds that in SuperCheck partial, so it changes the question mark to a check. Now why is that important? Well, the SuperCheck partial is a list of all the calls that are out there that are known to be active contesters. In like the last, I think it's 3 or 4 times that this contest has been run, HK1MW has been in one of those 3, 4, 5 contests. If they don't come up that way, it should be a caution to you that maybe you copied the call wrong. They're not an active contester as far as SuperCheck partial is concerned. Now, it doesn't mean that's the wrong call if it doesn't match. It just means that it might not be. And sometimes if you were a little questionable about whether you copied the call correctly and you kind of took an educated guess, you're 80% sure it was a W, then you go ahead and you say, well, it didn't match it up, so maybe it's not W, and you dig a little bit further for a little bit of help. Oh, right here, HK1MW. Yeah, I need him for the mult on those bands and the QSO for those bands, but I've already worked them on 15 meters, so I don't need to worry about getting them on 15. Other couple things about this. When I'm talking about the entry window, I'm talking about no call in here. Just type a few things in right there in the entry window. If you type in CW sideband RTTY, I think it's sideband SSB. It might be USB or LSB. Probably is. Type that in your call sign fields. It'll change your radio to those modes. If you want to change frequency, you don't have to turn the VFO or click a spot or whatever. If you type in the frequency you want to go to, 7153, take you there. Now, if you're already on 40 and you want to go to 153, you don't have to type the 7. You just type in 153 or 202. I think it needs 2 digits. And it'll take you wherever that number is on your band. If you want to change bands, again, you type in the whole thing, 28025. Another couple things, if you're operating split, you put something in there, you can hit Control Enter and it'll set your split frequency, whatever you put in the entry window. Control S will switch your split VFOs. Switch to the split one. Control Alt S will toggle your split mode. And remember, we talked a little bit about it up in the examples. Neat things you can do with these F keys and macros. You set this thing up, you can set up a macro to read where your other VFO or your other radio is, however you're doing it, and read what that frequency is and send it in your F key message. I'm here and listening down there too. Now we talked about F keys and macros. Here's another thing, keyboard shortcuts. And there are a couple pages of these things. I like to make a list up to ones I use and I think that are useful. And I wanted to mention some of them. I don't know if everybody was here last time, but Control U is a good one. If you're in a contest with a sequential serial number, you type it into the exchange field and you don't get through on a search and pounce, and the guy goes up one. Instead of having to retype the exchange, you just hit Control U and it increments the number by 1. If you're in CW, rather than clicking on that little tiny arrow, if you hit page up, page down, it'll change your CW speed for you. If you try to put a call in and N1MM says it's not a valid call, but you know that's what he sent, hit Control Alt Enter and it'll log it regardless of N1MM saying you can't. If you're in RIT and you hit your up down arrows, it'll change the RIT frequency. If you don't have RIT on, it'll change the whole frequency, both transmit and receive frequency of your rig. If you're making spots, we'll talk more about spots later. Alt-P will send a spot to the cluster, and I recommend, especially during sideband contests, that you go ahead and send spots. I know there are reasons people don't want to, but it's good for the guy on the other end. He gets more people going to him. And it's good for you if people send a lot of spots and you know who's on the band. You too can go work those people. Yeah, don't send a spot until after you worked them. Otherwise, he's going to be there in 1,000 people who come. And yeah, that quite possible that if you send a spot for a rare one, other people wouldn't have found them, and now they found them because you're there. But I just think it's good sportsmanship. That's how I was raised, coming up in contests, and I do it all the time. Now, when you're on that sending spots in the spot comment sheet up in the Telnet window, whatever you put in there is going to be sent as a spot comment. So I go ahead and do that. I send the mode because the California contest is all mode. So I want to send the mode and what the contest is. Why mode? Because it's CW, or it'll be kind of obvious because there's a lot of FT8 and RIDI and other stuff out there. People will know what it is. Super check partial. Took me a long time to really appreciate this too, but it comes, it's different than the call history file. I don't know if we'll go over that, but you can download the super check partial separate. As we said, it helps identify the correct calls, and I said the contest from the last 2 years, I guess. If you have busted calls, you can send them to that particular email address, and they'll get it updated for you and make corrections on your call, or whatever the case may be. When you're setting up your log, starting up a new contest log, on the associated files part, you've got these right here. These are the CQ or CW and sideband digital function keys, and you can set them up. I set them up for each contest. I have one for NAQP, I have one for the Michigan QSO Party, I have one for this, that, and the other, and you can change to your particular function key for whatever contest you're in, and that's how you program this in. So next time you load that particular contest, even if it's not that year, next time you load up the NAQP sideband contest, you can hit change, and it should remember, but you can go to that sideband contest as well. And you can do the same with sideband. And this is the super check partial area, and you can go online and download the latest and greatest for each one of these. I change these fairly often besides updating them. If I'm doing an international contest, CQ Worldwide or DX I'll have in super check partial for the entire world. But if I'm doing one from just North America, where although I can work DX, you just about only hear North American stations and the NAQP, I only want the US and the VE calls. This is master for US and VE. So that's what I put in for the NAQP contest, of which this is for. And we'll talk a little bit about what this is for in a minute or two. This loads what the exchange information was for this contest, essentially the last time it was run. And it'll look up the call sign and pre-fill what your exchange is. Let's go ahead and give that example a little bit. Okay, I'm going to have to switch over to N1MM. Give me just a second. And how do I make this smaller? There we go. Okay, I had some calls here that I was going to use. Let me find that piece of paper. Oh, printed it and didn't get it. All right. This is the check log or super check partial thing, and you get to that by window, and we're check right there. It'll open this thing up. Now this thing right here, I may grab a couple calls here wrong. We'll go ahead and type it in. Type in N4X, and as soon as I do this, XL, it comes up and puts up here that N4XL, notice that check mark, is a valid call sign. And each one of these does different things. There's a log. What is my log? It checks my log. This is from the master supercheck file, supercheck partial file. This is from the Telnet, what comes in on spots, which ones are active now, and this comes in from call history file that's in there. And this, we gotta think that's right. And this is the reverse lookup we'll talk about in a minute. Now notice as let me go back here. As I type this in, N4, it just not going to give you anything yet, but as soon as I hit X, all of a sudden all these different calls pop in up here. And I have worked N4OX. I don't know what the rest of them are. This is suggesting that it could be N4XD, L, FF, whatever. And you can think of this as cheating, but again, this is exactly what your competition is doing, and it's allowed and legal. And it just helps you get your call through a little bit better. So here I would go ahead and if I put in D, and it says all of a sudden, boom, that's a real call, and it highlights N4XD at the top as being a valid call up there in the master thing. And then you would go ahead and do your hit N4XD,
South Carolina,
and it moves over ready to go. And notice it populated that N4XD, the last time they did a contest was Ron, and he's in North Carolina. It's a very useful thing to have for populated, but people move around from place to place. So you always got to verify not only the call, but you got to verify the exchange information too. Otherwise, you're going to get a bad in the check log and have to take a penalty for getting the thing wrong. So that's how you go about doing this information. I'm going to hit F12 and wipe it. Boom, it goes back. If I typed NXL, well, there is no call like that, but it could be N3XL. There's a K7NXL if I just didn't have the prefix. And that's how you can look at it and figure out what some of those things might be. I can type in 4XL, and you can see there are plenty of them out there with the letters 4XL. And if I type N3XL, boom, he's a valid call. And I haven't worked him anywhere. You can see down here, I haven't worked him. If I hit spacebar, that's Bill in Maryland. The next one I was going to look at is reverse lookup. Hopefully this will work. Sometimes it didn't when I was doing. Let's say you search in pounds and you tune across a station, and all you hear is the guy give his name and his state. And when he answers, he doesn't give his call. He answers the next call, and the guy says name and state. That's all you get. Well, let's say it was Tom in South Carolina. Boom. You got N4XL and N4XR. Both had Toms in South Carolina. That's how a reverse lookup does. Very worthwhile. We can do Gary in South Carolina. Oops. Let's say I tuned across a thing and it said Gary in South Carolina. Gary's not coming up. Sorry. Pete in Maryland. Yep, Pete's there, N4ZR. So that's a very useful piece of information. And I don't know if this works. I think it does. Let me delete that and let's type in N4ZR. Now I've got the call, so it'll pre-fill automatically coming in there. And I'll go ahead and wipe and take all those things out. Any questions about that?
Yeah, so that's automatic, that reverse lookup?
Yes, if you have it activated in them choices.
Activated in choices.
Yeah, I think it's one of these things up here.
Oh, in the config, under config. Huh.
No, reverse lookup.
That's
Say again?
interesting. That's interesting. I've never used that.
Yeah, I think you got to have call history loaded, but there's no check mark for that.
Yeah,
and
sure.
These you can delete whatever windows you don't want here by right-clicking on it, make them go away. So there it says show reverse lookup pane. If you don't have it, you got to click that. I knew it was somewhere.
Gotcha. Okay, good. Thanks.
By the way, any of these windows you want to know a little bit about them, you can right-click on it and do help, and it'll tell you a little bit about, take you to that portion of the window it's supposed to. And also, there are many times many things in here that you didn't know about. Like here's a check mark to show GMT time, show bearing information. You can change things all around. Show function key panel, all that stuff. So right-click on any one of these and They can do all kinds of different things for different stuff. So any other questions? Okay, that's all I got. I will bring this back so you can see what I use for resources on this. How do I start this again? There you go. Those are just the user manual, and PJ2T is all I got for references on this thing. So any questions? Guess that's it then.
I'm going to have to play with this for quite a while to start be able to make proficient use of these things.
Well, what I would do is, if I were you, stick with the basic. This is how I did it anyway. I would stick with just making it work simple and not do a bunch of these things until I had the simple stuff, the basic things down, like the entry windows, play with a macro too. I wouldn't mess with super check partial for a while, for example, and then just gradually build up. When I'm contesting, a lot of times, this is slightly off topic, but I would always pick something to work on my next contest. When I was really working up to, I think I'm a reasonable contester now. I'm certainly not the best, but I'm far from a beginner. As I worked up to the level I'm at, always pick something. And what I would do is figure out what I was doing wrong. Like say I was not turning the VFO enough. I'd sit and listen to somebody too long. What I would do is put up a yellow sticky and write on it VFO with an exclamation point. And then every time I'd look around at my screen, I'd see that yellow sticky, and I'd say, oh yeah, I'm supposed to be turning it. And every time you do a contest, either look ahead of time what you want to work on, or after you're done with the contest, critique yourself. Be honest. Say, I screwed that up, I did good on this. And just pick out the important things that you think are there. Now, super check partial may not be something for you right now. Why? Because you're going to be distracted from doing other things that you normally wouldn't have a problem doing and hurting with rate. As you get a little bit better, your attention span grows, and maybe that's the time you can begin to move into some of the others. But everybody's different, and you may have a different approach to it, but that's how I do things.
That makes a lot of sense to me. Now, here's a question that shows what a what a new guy I am. How do I learn the basics of Telnet? I don't understand that worth talking about.
Another one.
Well, there's a a ton of things here. Anybody want to talk about it besides me? I'll ramble a bit. Okay.
Yeah, sure.
You click here, window, and you bring up your Telnet window. And this is what the Telnet window looks like. When it comes up, you may have to go, I think it comes up to this section right here, cluster. Oh yeah, you want everything. Jeez. Where am I again here? Thanks for saying that, Gary. I need to bring this back over. There it is, share. And I want to share this screen. Okay, so this is window and Telnet to get into this, and it brings up this window right here. I apologize with all the junk in the background, but I suppose I can close some of these out. We don't need to look at them. There you go. You can see this one a little easier. You go to the clusters tab and you choose a cluster. Now you can have plenty of them. Select from live cluster list, and let's only take clusters from North America. And you click on that. I don't know why it's not coming up. I guess there it goes, a little bit slow. And here are all the clusters that are out there. And you'll have to do a little bit of research and figure out which ones you like. I like NC7J. He's got several of them. I don't remember his port number. This says 96% of the people, the higher that number, the better, more people are using that particular thing. N67J or 81%, whatever. It's NZ4ZKF is another popular cluster that I know. But you have to do your research and figure out what clusters you like. I like AE5E, NC7J. VE7CC is one that a lot of people liked. However, he's been having some issues with throughput and has been crashing and stuff a lot. So then you go ahead and you choose your cluster from that list, and you can put them in favorites. I have AE5E in my favorites, is the only one here with this. And then you click connect to the AE5E cluster, and it'll start coming up here. When it does, it'll be a screen, and you got to give it your call sign, and it'll go ahead and log in. Let me disconnect. Bye. And then reconnect. It'll come up like that. I told it to automatically fill in my call sign, but you'd fill in yours, and then it says hello Kevin and how it does. I'm not going to get into a ton of information about which telnet is better, about the different types of clusters, which type of what the commands are that you can give. Like these are commands that you send to the cluster. I'm only going to talk about the ones that are in N1MM right here. So once you get connected to a cluster, you come over here to bands and modes, click on that, and you can either give it all modes, contest mode, CW, and phone. You can select both. Select the bands that you're interested in. But a lot of times people say they're not seeing spots and they haven't changed this to that particular contest. So you always want to go in here and check that. So once you get the filters set up correctly, go over here to the filters tab. On this thing, if you just tell it connect to AE5E, it's going to send you filters from Germany. It's going to send, or excuse me, spots from Germany, from Japan, etc. Well, they're not going to do you any good. So what I do is I tell it to send me typically only spots that come from K1, 2, and 3, and 4, because I got the most chance of hearing who they are. So I tell them to do that. A lot of people land on the same particular frequency, so you randomize your incoming spots a little bit. And if I QSY, it'll I can't see what that is, where that's coming from. Let me make that be a little bit bigger. QSY wipes call, puts in the band map. I like to show non-workable spots, etc. Or you can tell it to only show ones that are in call history, but you'll be missing out on stations if you do that. I don't want to see beacons, so I don't check that, but you may want to look at beacon spots. All those options are in there. We talked about spot comment already, what those particular ones are. I won't go over the band pans and special calls. So that's basically how you go about setting up for bringing spots in. Questions
for
on
what
that?
it's worth, I was having a situation where randomly I would be disconnected from the cluster that I was on, and I couldn't figure out, because I had never learned it, how to get reconnected. So this is going to help a whole lot.
Yeah. If that happens to you a lot, it's either on your end, which I suspect because of the problems you're having today, it might be, because you're going to get a lot more traffic coming in. Maybe you're overloading your end. But if not, go find another cluster. That's why I left VE7CC and went to AE5E. He doesn't lose his feed that often.
Yeah, it's funny. John, K4FT, helped me get this set up, just the basics, so I could get started. And somehow I wound up on WT3Q, and I haven't seen Sam in about, I don't know, 30 years. But I used to operate at his station, so just by habit, I was using his telnet cluster.
Huh, that worked out well. All righty.
Kevin, I was over at W7WZ's for CQ Worldwide, and they
said you did great.
Yeah, we had a lot of fun. Yeah, I mean those operators over there are just unbelievable. But anyway, my question was, they were hooked into W3LPL, and he gets feeds, I guess, from all over the place. So we're going down the band map and stuff. I see stuff spotted from, I don't know, like Japan or China. I mean, way not around here. and it's like wasting my time, hitting these things flying down the band map. And I'm just wondering,
Up, up here where it says filters.
yeah,
Only give me spots, show spots on the band map from K1, 2, 3, and 4.
right. But so W3L, so that would include W3LPL, right?
Well, if I was connected to W3LPL, I'd get
Yeah,
spots from W3LPL, but he's not unique in getting spots from all over. They
right.
all share the same feed from clusters around the world.
Yeah,
So
that's
if
the
you're
thing
connected,
that messes you up,
but
So,
again,
um, I when I was up in Georgia, I had a fellow W4AX that lived real close to me, and he had a skimmer on there, and it was just great because everything he spotted, I could hear, and it was like 90% going down the band map. I could hit them all like crazy, but and I think K3LR is kind of the same thing. They get feeds from all over the place, and a lot of those spots just don't do anything for you,
I don't think you're understanding what I'm saying.
Okay.
This says only show spots from clusters that have the prefix K, only show spots from either skimmers or stations that are in K1, 2, 3, and 4. So they're still getting, AE5E is still getting all the crap that you're talking about that W3LPL shows in K3LR. That says only show me spots from the people that are in those regions, which I got a reasonable chance of hearing. And if you
Okay.
look down here, we're going
Okay.
to
That's
talk
it.
about this in our next one. If you look down here, EA1 is spotted by W3LPL.
Yeah.
KK5DR comes from W3RGA. There's nobody in there from Germany or Japan or anything. They're only from zones 1, 2, 3, and 4.
Gotcha.
That's
Okay.
what you're looking for, I think.
Yeah. That's where we needed some more information. Yeah. Okay. Gotcha. Thanks. Yeah, that's useful.
Okay, we're going to talk about this stuff a little bit more later. In the next one particularly, we're going to talk about how to jump from spots to pots and everything else. But I'm going to bring another screen in here and give you a preview of it. If I look up here, this is kind of complicated. I can't really give a good demonstration because we're not in a contest where all this is going to work out real well. But I have a band scope, which we call the spectrum display in here. I've got the band map, which most people are used to. And N1MM has something called an assist available mult and queue window. And these spots are in all the places, W6ZFG, WB6ZFG, and WB6ZFG. They all duplicate where the spots are. So if I'm here looking for a spot and I'm tuning my radio, see the green line going up across in there, and I come across where this guy is, WB6ZFG, I know I probably I've got him. I'm in a scratch database, so I'm going to type his call in, ZFG. I'm going to say it's D, and I'm going to log him. All of a sudden, he turned gray there. His call went away there, and he's no longer in the band map. So I'm left with a screenshot that I can still see. If I tune across him next time, I don't need to stop on that frequency because I already worked him. I can go up to this next guy and work him. So I'm going to stop there and listen to who he is. Well, that's actually probably not anybody in particular. I don't know who he is. I'll go up to KK5DR. So that's how you can use these three. Or you can be right here, and I don't think I'm set up for this right away. Let me see if it's contest. R1 next spot. This list right here, if I hit a certain key combination, I jump to TI5JON. I push a single button, I go to F4HYJ. I push a single button, I take the next one off this list and go to him. So you can just jump through this list, and I get rates of over 100 an hour. Matter of fact, I had like 110 an hour, I think it was, only doing search and pounce for a while during the CQ Worldwide. So it's an amazing program. So we'll talk about that next go round.
Okay.
Other questions?
Your F keys for WAV files. I don't do a lot, if any, of those things, so I was really interested in all that. But you happened to say something that caught my ear. Was F10 has got to have a WAV file in there, or what happens? That you don't, it doesn't work, period, or?
No. I'm in a sideband right here. I'm going to right click and open up this, what this is. I don't have to have a WAV file in there. This is my format for blank key. Oh, I don't want to save this. I'll figure it out again later. And now when I look at, I'm in search and pounce. When I look at run, I know that there's nothing there. I got just a dash in there. It's kind of small. I'm sorry about that. I can't.
It's okay.
I'll make it bigger right now.
Let's see it.
So no, there's no WAV file in there. But if I want to record on the fly, like I want to change my CQ or something, I want to change how I say my name. Instead of Tom, I want to say Tom, Tango, Oscar, Mike. When I can push a key combination, and if I got this set up so that it's like F10, that's my way of just saying there's no real WAV file in there. And then I record a WAV file in Audacity. I make a blank WAV file that's maybe a second long. And I say, what you want to do here is go to NAQ. Crap. We'll just copy this, paste it in there, and change that to whatever that WAV file I created that was a second long. It'll go ahead and record whatever I'm recording on the fly into that file.
Okay.
Then all I got to do is hit F10 next time, and it'll play back exactly what I did.
Okay, that makes sense. Thanks. Yeah. All right.
What else we got? We covered a lot of ground. I never expect anybody to remember all this stuff. My goal is basically to put something in the back of your brain when you're trying to solve a problem. Wait a minute, we talked about that, and get you started with that. It can be done. I know we talked about that. And the other thing is to whet your appetite a little bit to go dig and solve whatever unique problems you have. You probably can with a little bit of research.
Okay, is that band scope pulling from a radio, or is that you're
coming from my
accessing online?
TS590, which doesn't have a band scope, by the way. I've got an outboard SDR receiver plugged into the IF of it.
That's what I was wondering.
Most rigs these days have the ability to output that data in one form or another. Now, many people don't like how this crowded display is. It's kind of hard to see sometimes. You can imagine what it's like on a CQ Worldwide weekend, how many calls would be in that field. But you can grab this thing and change it to whatever diagonal thing you like. It'll move around and change itself for different stuff. And I showed you a way that everything that's on there is something that is a workable spot. And these little red dots, I didn't talk about them, but anytime there's a red dot, that means there's an unknown station there that could be worked, and it's probably one of these. You can just jump. It's not one of these because there's no call there. You can, with a single key combination, jump to that red dot and say, hey, that's a station that's not spotted. Maybe that's somebody that I can pick up early because he's not spotted. And then jump to the next red dot. And notice this blue line determines how many red dots and stuff are there. There's a lot you can do with this. Now, if you don't like using N1MM's window and you want to use the one on your radio, or you want to use another one from a different program, you can go ahead and do that, but you lose all that integration capability.
One of the things I really like about it is, if you're looking for, CQ01, you got a million stations across there. You want to call CQ, and you can usually find a little slot where you can just jump in there. You know what I mean? Find a new frequency to
This
CQ.
little button, yeah, you can. That's how you do it with everybody. Or you can just click this button, and I find the next CQ frequencies up in frequency. It says, hey, you got all that open area right there.
Huh.
So
And this is an N1MM.
yeah,
This, oh, yeah, I got to check that out. That's something new.
that's why I keep harping on N1MM. I'm sold on it. You don't have to use these features. You've been using it for all. Didn't even know that stuff was there. So you don't have to use them to make
Oh,
do.
yeah, it's really amazing all the technology he's got in there.
It's the only reason I'm scoring as high as I am. I'm not
Yeah,
a great contester.
that was well. Yeah, we appreciate this. Even though I've been using it a long time. I was off for a while, but just finding a few little things here. Gee, I didn't know that. I didn't know semicolon sent that guy the exchange and everything like that again. That saved me hitting another F key.
Yeah.
So I love it. Keep it up, Kevin.
Well, I got trashed by a couple of people. They don't like me sharing all the tips, all the secrets and all that kind of stuff. But that's how I learned. Go online and find out all these people did different things and what they did. The past people shared it with me, so why don't I pass it along to other people? Thanks, appreciate it, Gary.
Hey, Kevin, this is pretty amazing stuff. I mean, also, I'm going to have to sit down now with all 600 pages of the manual.
Well, what I do, like I said, is figure out the basics. And then once I thought I was getting a handle on it, I just looked down the table of contents and said, well, that sounds interesting. And we'll look through the manual to figure that out. And then I'd pick something else and spend a little bit of time looking on that. And then you go on a trail and go there. But just pick a topic that interests you and work on it. The other thing that's kind of a pain in the butt about it is they're constantly changing N1MM. So what you think you know isn't necessarily going to be the same a little later. Or just because you can't do it now doesn't mean you won't next month. And if you tell them, hey, why don't we get this feature, they're pretty good about doing it. That's how come it's grown. Alrighty, I thank you all very much.